Kate's mornings were predictable. Coffee right after waking, then straight to work. The routine was oddly comforting. But today, as she stepped out into the crisp morning air, her routine shattered. A crowd had gathered near the alleyway beside her apartment complex, murmuring in hushed, uneasy voices. Curiosity got the best of her, and she moved closer. A body lay sprawled on the pavement, lifeless and still. The dark stain pooling beneath it told a grim story. Before she could fully process the sight, a hand clutched her arm, making her jump. Daniel, her neighbor from 2 doors down, stood beside her. Daniel was quiet, but always friendly. His dark eyes flickered with concern as he shook his head. "I heard the sirens this morning. Didn't think it'd be something like this." Khate nodded absently, her mind spun with questions. Who was the victim? How had they ended up here? But more importantly, who had done this? The police arrived within minutes, securing the scene with yellow tape. Officers moved with trained precision, their radios crackling. Khate stepped back, watching as they assessed the area. She wasn't the type to linger at crime scenes, but something about this one felt off. Daniel stayed beside her, too still, too invested. "I wonder if it was a robbery," he mused. "It's not the safest area." Khate glanced at him. Something about his tone unsettled her. Too casual, too controlled. But she shook it off. People processed shock in different ways. Still, unease twisted in her gut. Days passed, and the investigation picked up speed. The victim was identified. Richard, a businessman from the city. The autopsy revealed multiple stab wounds. The killer had known what they were doing. Khate found herself unable to ignore her curiosity. The crime had happened too close to home, literally. The more she replayed their conversation with Daniel that morning, the more it unsettled her. She started watching him. He had always been friendly, but now something seemed off. He asked too many questions about the case, inserting himself into conversations with neighbors and even the police. Always eager to help, always offering theories, almost as if he wanted to control the narrative. One evening, Khate took a walk around the complex, her mind racing through what she knew. Daniel had mentioned hearing sirens, but he never said anything about a struggle, a scream, anything before that. Wouldn't he have heard something? She slowed near the alleyway. The pavement was mostly clean, but a faint discoloration remained. The thought of Richard bleeding out here made her stomach turn. A rustling sound made her stop. She turned sharply. Daniel stood nearby, hands in his pockets. "Didn't mean to startle you," he said with a small smile. "I just find myself coming here too. It's strange, isn't it? Knowing something like this happened right here." Khate studied him. Yeah, strange. For the first time, she noticed his fingers tapping against his jeans, nervous energy barely contained. The next break in the case came fast. The police found traces of blood in a nearby dumpster, wiped down but not completely erased. A knife, partially cleaned, was pulled from inside. The real shock: it was a match for Daniel's fingerprints. The news spread quickly. Kate's suspicions turned to certainty. She returned to her apartment that night, locking the door with precision. The thought of Daniel, someone she had passed in the hallway for years, being the killer made her skin crawl. A knock at the door sent her heart racing. She hesitated before peering through the peephole. Daniel stood outside, his expression unreadable as he called her name in his usual calm tone. Forcing herself to sound normal as she responded, keeping her voice steady as he wanted to talk. Every instinct urged her to refuse, to pretend she wasn't home, but avoiding him might make him suspicious. Slowly, she unlocked the door, leaving the chain secured. She saw him exhaling and rubbing the back of his neck. When he spoke up, his voice tight with the news that a knife had been found. As he looked into her eyes, the weight of his words settled. If the police had it, He knew they'd be coming for him next. She kept her expression neutral, but a question lingered in her eyes. Why is he telling me that? Some time ago I had a knife like that, though it disappeared. The tone of his voice remained controlled, but something in his eyes betrayed him, something fleeting. It could have been fear, or perhaps guilt. The uncertainty hung in the air, leaving him uneasy. Her grip on the door tightened, as she told him he should talk to the police. He nodded, letting out a soft chuckle, saying she was one of the few people he actually trusted. He stepped back, unreadable as ever, before offering a simple farewell and disappearing down the hall. As soon as he was gone, she locked the door again, her hands shaking. The police arrested Daniel the next morning. The evidence stacked up quickly. Security footage placed him near the crime scene at an unusual hour. His alibi collapsed under scrutiny. The final piece was trace of Richard's blood found on a jacket that Daniel had attempted to dispose. From her window, Khate watched as they led him away. Without resisting, he didn't even look surprised. All this time, she had second-guessed herself, doubted her instincts. But in the end, the truth had been right in front of her. Daniel had been hiding in plain sight all along.